just as someone who serves the public, how disheartening is this for you?
Well, as to your first question, we plan on looking back as far as we can in number of years. There is a records retention law, and so it could be that many of the records that we would seek to use don't exist going back more than about 2 years, but we will go back as far as we can. As to it being embedded in the culture, I think that remains to be seen. We're going to wait and see in our investigation whether that is so. It could be a systemic problem in the state police. I think it is slightly premature to say that with confidence. We'll have to see where it goes.
Why should the public have faith in the state police?
Well, state police is a big institution. There are many, many troopers. I don't know how many offhand. I think it would be a mistake to tar all troopers with this kind of conduct. And also, I can tell you, as a line prosecutor in this state for many years, I've been impressed again and again with the professionalism and work ethic of the state police troopers and detectives that I have worked with. And so, frankly, I hope that we do not find that this is a systemic and truly widespread problem. But at this point, it is what it is.
So you're saying that the public should have confidence in the state police?
Yes, I think the public should have confidence in the state police troopers and detectives that they may encounter day to day.
How disheartening is this for you?
It's not disheartening for me personally, meaning I think it's unfortunate. I think this is why you have federal enforcement. I think with a statewide law enforcement agency as prominent and as influential as the Massachusetts State Police is, I think you need the feds to look into this kind of thing so you have a truly independent and thorough investigation that the public has confidence that that is happening.
Why did you feel like you needed to arrest them at their homes very early this morning? Why not, for instance, have them turn themselves in or what have you? Why did you choose that?
Well, because these are crimes, I can tell you that a general policy of my office is that we arrest people. We don't like to pick and choose categorically who gets arrested and who does not, because it seems like favoritism to the public. As to arrests at their homes early, that is a standard operational approach across cases that we do in this office. I don't know if you want to add more to that, Hank.
No, it's a safest protocol, and once again, there is no separate set of expectations, or benefit given, to a police officer versus anyone else who would get arrested.
So you're talking about $54,000 embezzled here combined. How big of a slice of this overall scandal do you think that is? Is that just a small portion, or is that most of the money that was taken?
Well, I think that's, at the end of the day, that's the same question as whether it's a systemic problem or not a systemic problem. We can't know at this stage how much money we're really talking about. The information in the complaints that we filed today relate to a single year, 2016 alone, and only 3 troopers. Do we find much more than that? At this point, I'm not going to comment on that. But again, I think that question really is this systemic and so a lot of money? Or do we find that it's not systemic, or it's only confined to Troop E, and so not a lot of money? And I'm not going to opine on that publicly yet.
From what you know so far, would you say that this all could have been prevented if there was better oversight in the state police and in this particular troop of all this overtime? It's a lot of money in taxpayer dollars that they get for these overtime shifts.
I'll say generally, I think it is an oversight and compliance question that many police organizations or other organizations that have an overtime shift system have to deal with. Some do it better than others. I'm not an expert on the current internal procedures at the state police. I do think the state police is now committed to fixing this problem. As Special Agent in Charge Shaw mentioned, the colonel at the state police has been cooperative with our efforts, and we hope that that continues.
You mentioned ghost tickets. Are there any motorists out there that you believe were harmed with citations that they don't deserve or anything like that because of this alleged fraud?
No. What appears to have happened is what the state police employees here involved in this complaint seem to have done is change the dates on old tickets or fabricated tickets in there entirely and submitted them to the state police. But because the citation was not actually issued to a motorist, that citation can't then go to the RMV because it would eventually become known that the citation was written by the officer, but the officer had in fact never stopped the motorist. So it does not seem that any motorist got a ticket they weren't supposed to get. It's that the state police record-keeping system reflects that tickets were written when in fact they were not, as a way of covering up the fact that the trooper had not worked that shift.
Any repercussions for running random people in the CJIS system, or is that more at the state level?
No, I don't think there's any repercussions for a given motorist for having their information run in the CJIS system.
Are you considering RICO in the case of the state police?
I'm not going to comment on legal theories that we're batting around internally for this case.
Can you say how far back you'll go and how broad it will be? I know this is Troop B, but will you look at all troops? Will you look how far back in the years do you think?
We'll go back as far in years as we can. As I mentioned before, there is a record retention law. It appears that most records of these of relevant to this investigation need not be kept more than 2 years back, so we may be limited by that. We will not limit our investigation just to Troop E. We consider our purview to be state police wide, all troops.
Do those shifts have to do at all? It doesn't look like it, perhaps I'm wrong, with the detail work, either for mascot or for private parties?
No, this was traffic enforcement work. Both of these programs, the AIR program and the X-Team program, were aimed at increasing state police presence on the Mass Pike in order to increase safety on the Mass Pike for motorists.
Did your office review any of the records of private details or details for publications as part of this?
I'm not going to comment on that.
You mentioned this is just the beginning. Does that mean you're going to take a closer look at 2016 when you say that, meaning you're going to be looking at other troopers potentially?
Both those things.
Was any of this on the radar, or it all brought to your attention prior to this investigation? Had you heard any inklings of the possibility of overtime for Audit Troop B?
I don't think I understand the question. Before when?
This investigation, this large investigation, had it ever been brought to your attention, or was it on the radar that this could be a possibility?
I think we've been aware that it was a possibility for approximately a year, maybe a little more. Before that, I'm not aware of my office having done sort of concerted enforcement activity on this particular subject before then, but I can't tell you for sure.
Was any type of whistleblower that had come forward prior to this investigation?
No, there was not a whistleblower. I mean, I think some people are aware there was a Channel 5 story on a trooper Chin a while back who was forced to take responsibility for altering a ticket and said publicly that other troopers were involved in that activity, and that was a factor in us pursuing it.
You know, this administration has sort of disbanded Troop B, so to speak. Do you think that's a positive step? Is that enough for what you're seeing, what you've investigated?
I think that's a question for the state police. I think it's a positive sign. Again, we've been happy with what we've heard from Colonel Gilpin over at the state police, and she's been supportive of efforts to implement reforms in the state police in this area. I don't have a specific opinion on whether disbanding Troop B is a good thing or a bad thing.
Now, is your investigation going, I mean, there have been other issues, obviously, with the state police, including some of the stories about a report being altered that led to a lawsuit. Is your probe going to look beyond overtime into other issues involving state police, or is it focused narrowly on overtime?
Right now, the investigation is focused on overtime. It is not unusual in the course of an investigation to find leads that cause us to open another investigation. So I won't say that that won't happen here, but our investigation now, based on what we've seen, is focused on the overtime issue.
Is it possible that these three troopers have used overtime in prior years, or have you guys determined that their profits can be compensation?
I don't think we know the answer to that. Proving these kinds of crimes is in some ways a record-keeping exercise. You're taking records in 4 or 5 different categories, you're cross-referencing them, and seeing what you come up with. The reason why I say that is that it's extremely labor-intensive, and so for purposes of today's charges, we focused on the year 2016. We have records beyond 2016, and if they show us information allowing us to prove charges, we'll move forward with those.
Would you say there were any?
What do you hope the message is with these 3 arrests?
Well, I think the message is twofold, and I said this in my prepared remarks, and so did Hank, which is that on the one hand, we have to investigate corruption cases that implicate taxpayer dollars and which implicate the integrity of a law enforcement agency. On the other hand, we have tremendous respect for the state police. I think, like all state and local law enforcement agencies, they do a hard job every day, and the state police does it well. So I would not want this to tar the state police in its entirety with one brush, but allegations like this, where you could have widespread systemic corruption, in some ways petty corruption, it's not showing up for a shift and lying about having worked it, I think you need somebody to look at that, because that kind of rot tends to spread. And in a law enforcement agency, you need its members to be working at the highest level of integrity.
And also, are you surprised by what you've seen so far?
I don't understand the question.
Based on, these are troopers who have the Mass State Police badge, and what you've looked at so far at the amount of overtime that's been embezzled, and as you continue to look at this investigation, are you surprised this is going on?
Well, I think I'd say I'm disappointed to see it going on. I've been in this business a long time. I've seen cases involving law enforcement agencies before. It's always frustrating to see them. It's frustrating for the other members of that law enforcement organization. It's frustrating being in law enforcement myself and seeing the hit to the law enforcement reputation that happens when you see these kinds of events. So I think I would leave it at that.
More than 35 trooping members have been flagged by the state police audit. Would you say that you're using that as a baseline for your investigation?
Not a baseline, but we're aware of the state police audit. We have used that audit to supplement our efforts. We do an independent check using our own resources on the results of the audit, but the audit has been helpful in allowing us move the investigation forward.
Would you say that where these troopers may have testified in court, that there's any reason to cast doubt on what they said, given the alleged fraud here today?
Well, it's tough for me to comment on that. A few things. First, these are allegations in the complaint. These guys are innocent until they're proven guilty. If they were proven guilty of any of these charges, sure, it could lead courts to question their integrity and their veracity when they're on the stand, but I'll leave that to other law enforcement. I'll leave that to other prosecuting bodies, like the DA's offices and the courts that they're prosecuting in.
Can you just say, with the AG's office also investigating, is this going to be independent, cooperative? Is there any working together on this, or is it separate?
We've had some communication with Maura Healy's office, but the federal investigation is an independent investigation. It's important to us that it be an independent investigation. I think in investigations like this, one of the things you have to think about is public confidence in the result. And so the feds being entirely separate from the state system, I think it's important to maintain that. So at the end of the day, wherever the chips fall on this, and however many troopers or other members of the organization are or are not charged, we want the public to have confidence that it was an independent look by the feds and that law enforcement did what it was supposed to do in this situation.
Thank you.